Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we're talking about the top 16 of the Tech Initiative Season 3. So this is going to be the top cut. As usual, players in order to make it to the top cut have to do a record of at least 6-2 during the league the months before, and then they're going to be playing with a top 16 in direct elimination. Players can change their deck list from what they're playing during the league compared to what they're playing in top cuts. And this is currently what the people have decided to play in this tournament. So we're going to review every single list and then talk about the different matchup as well, because players are going to be matched up in order of this list. So for example, here number 1 is going to be matched here against number 16, number 8 is going to be matched against number 9, and so on. So we're also going to be commenting on the matchup. Anyway, first of all, we have Eroth. So global overview of the meta. We have a very strange meta here in the Tech Initiative. We have 5 Krennic Green, 5 players playing Krennic Green, 3 players playing Boba, 2 playing Boba Yellow, 1 playing Boba Green, 3 people playing Sabine, 2 Sabine Yellow and 1 Sabine Green, and we have 2 players playing Palpatine, 1 Palpatine Yellow, 1 Palpatine Green, and finally 2 Luke Green decks. So I would say the meta is pretty well relatively representative, except for the fact that Krennic is way overrepresented. I don't know exactly what happened. I think it's just a coincidence that a lot of people decided to play Krennic Green. And Han Green is very underrepresented. Han Green won Season 2 and Season 1 of the Tech Initiative, actually is on back win of the Tech Initiative Top Cut. Maybe a lot of people were expecting that Han Green would show up, so they've decided to play a deck that has a good matchup versus Han, which Krennic and Palpatine both have a pretty good matchup versus Han. So that might be, maybe everybody had the same idea at the same time, saying, well, I'm not going to be playing Han because everybody's going to be expecting it. I'm going to play a counter of Han, and maybe something like this happened. Another deck that is very underrepresented in this tournament in general, and that's not only about this season, but I would say in general, is the hard control deck. So the Iden Blue, Vader Blue, don't really see much play. I think the only hard control deck was the Boba Blue in this last season, which is not even the most hardest control deck you can see. So hard control also not very well represented in this specific tournament. So we'll see how things shape up. So we're gonna start here with Eroth list, who is playing Sabine Yellow. So I think the list itself is relatively what you would expect from Sabine Yellow. 3 copies of Sneak Attack is definitely a lot more than people play. Sneak Attack is a great combo with K2SO. It's a great combo with Fleet Lieutenant, but then other than those 2 cases, then it becomes a little bit more situational. It's okay with Black One. So it's kind of like a card that can be a little bit situational, but if you find it at the right spot, it's a great card that allows you to play more units that comes into play and can attack right away. This is one of the great strengths of Sabine Yellow over version of Sabine, is its ability to play ready threats that can attack right away and really push damage despite having no board position at all. I think this is one of the things that, generally speaking, Sabine excels, is the ability to push damage despite having no board sit whatsoever. And Sabine Yellow does it better than any other version of Sabine. So this version of Sabine decides to play Jeddah City over the 30 HP base. So in theory, you would say that Jeddah City is almost like a 29 HP base, because at the worst case scenario, you can just use the -4 on an enemy unit to make that unit basically deal 0 damage, and this way you basically save 4 HP, so it's kind of a 29 HP base. But obviously it can be used in many other ways. For example, you can play it on a Sentinel, so then you can attack the Sentinel without taking any damage. You can use it to protect your units, so it is a bit more flexible. But obviously 4 HP is not exactly the same as 5. Every HP matters, especially if you're playing the aggro mirror. And another very important factor that made people basically give up on Jeddah City over time is the fact that using Jeddah City requires you to spend an action, and this has been kind of the hidden cost that Jeddah City that we strongly underestimated when the card was first revealed. And then as time went by, people decided to switch over to the 30 HP base with better result, and now it is almost universally admitted that 30 HP base is better than Jeddah City. But Eros decided to go against that common knowledge here and decided to say, well, I'm going to be giving another shot to Jeddah City and see how that works out. We'll see how that works out for him. It's funny because his list is named West of an Action, which is kind of like the big criticism that we make of Jeddah City is the fact that it does require you to spend an action to be used, which often leads you to lose the initiative and stuff like this. So we'll see exactly how that works out and how Jeddah City performs. Um, but the rest of the list is pretty much what you would expect from Sabine Green. We'll see a couple of interesting choices here with one chopper in the sideboard. I wonder in what matchup you would want to have this. The bamboozles in the main deck as well to take your opponent by surprise. Keep in mind that this is a tournament with open deck lists where people have perfect information over what the opponent has in their deck. Therefore, they can play around those kind of like random card, but maybe forcing your opponent to play around Bamboozle is already by itself make it worse in its inclusion. He's going to be facing Knaku playing a Palpatine Yellow. I actually think very highly of Palpatine Yellow. I think Palpatine Yellow is a very good deck. With a lot of interesting in the synergies going on in this. Is the deck that was first played during. I remember that we did some results during the Twickenham tournament, the London tournament that happened very close to release, and since then people have been keep playing it with various results. And so what the Emperor Palpatine Yellow deck is all about is this idea of going for this big Palpatine turn. So you got the sneak attack that allows you to play your very big threat very much earlier. You have this combo of using Change of Heart to steal one of your opponent's units, and then you use that unit, and then you kill that unit permanently using Palpatine, so the unit never comes back into the opponent control. Obviously, it plays a lot of very solid cards. You have all the green black package, and you also have combo with ISB Agent, which comes into play, can kind of ping an enemy unit, and then that allows you to use, it makes it much easier to use your Palpatine's ability to take control of that unit later on in the game. And then you can sacrifice the ISB agent body to recycle with the Palpatine's ability and stuff like that. So there's a lot of interesting kind of cool synergies going on, and overall some pretty strong cards. With all that being said, there's a few choices that I'm really surprised about in this version. First of all, only 2 copies of Resupply for me is really difficult to understand. I find resupplies to be ramp in Palpatine is absolutely essential to make the deck work, and making your deck less consistent just by playing 2 resupplies, it doesn't make much sense to me. Another interesting choice here is the TIE Advance here, 2 copies of TIE Advance. I wonder exactly what is the particular need for this card in this deck. I mean, it does buff your ASB agent, I guess, and turns those units into like stronger units, I guess. But I feel like there's just so many other options in this deck that you would want to go for. So the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. You also see 1 copy of the Gladiator Star Destroyer. Once again, I would expect more late game units, especially like Devastators, to go, which are pretty strong card to get with Sneak Attack for a big finishing move. Decides to go for the Gladiator. Not exactly sure why the Gladiator is included here. Probably a toolbox card for to block the Space Arena. And then there's a couple of interesting choices, but overall, like for 90% of the deck, it is the Palpatine Yellow deck that we know and love with some and I think it's a pretty legit deck. With all that being said, yes, it's a legit deck, but at the end of the day, Palpatine has and will always probably have a terrible matchup against aggro. Certain version of Boba Palpatine Yellow do a little bit better because Shoot First really will help out a lot. But overall, the deck is still fairly weak to aggro, so this is not a good matchup at all for Knaku. He was hoping to not fall against an aggro deck. And that's going to be a pretty bad matchup for him, unfortunately. Moving on to the next list is Hippo, which is the winner of the previous season, playing Sabine Green. And his version is pretty much what you would expect, with one notable exception is the 2 copy of U-Wing Reinforcement main deck followed by the Millennium Falcon. In my opinion, this I've said it before and I say it again, if you are playing a Sabine Green deck and you want to improve your matchup versus control, playing U-Wing Reinforcement either in the main deck or in the sideboard is one of the best way to do it. It really gives you a huge recovery whenever your board has been emptied, and allow you to basically get more units like especially if you're playing against a control deck that is able to heal a lot, then the only way to win the game is to put back some bolt pressure and really and U-wing reinforcement is obviously the best way to do this. Another interesting choice that he makes is that he's also playing Millennium Falcon. I also been myself a very big advocate of Millennium Falcon in aggro. If you see my very first my Leia deck tech video, I have the U-wing reinforcement Millennium Falcon combo. The idea, of course, you play U-wing reinforcement, you get the Falcon, and because the Falcon, whenever you grab the U-wing from the Falcon, you do not pay the aspect penalty of the Falcon. You treat it as a 3 resources card, so you can go Millennium Falcon combined with any other 3-drop plus a wind drop or like 2 additional 2-drops, and that gives your U-wing reinforcement immediate impact because you get those Falcons that can attack right away. Not only that, Millennium Falcon is not it's not a bad card to play just for 5 resources, just a 5 resources card that comes to play and attack. Whenever you're playing the Falcon, it usually comes down later on in the game as a finisher. And at this point of the game, paying 2 extra resources for the Falcon is not really that big of a deal. I mean, obviously it is significantly weaker than in the Sabine Yellow, but I still believe Falcon is a very legit card even for 5 resources. So I'm a pretty big fan of Falcon out of aspects. In this case, decided to include it in the main deck. So basically what Hippos decided to do here, he decided to play a pretty classic green Sabine, but that has some specific tech that I think is going to improve its control matchup by a significant amount. So I think his deck is very solid. In the sideboard, the other it's pretty classic, accepted the Starwing Scout. So Starwing Scouts I think can be very powerful if you're playing a deck that doesn't have ways to deal like single damage. Once again, it's a very good card against control because it puts a lot of pressure. And if it dies and you happen to have initiative, you get to draw a bunch of cards. So I actually find Starwing Scout to be very good. I think the only reason why we don't see Starwing Scout as often as it should have is because it's not heroic, so it disturbs your 4 cards I believe in. But as you can see here, Hippo has one of the most 4 cards I believe in friendly deck list that I've seen because he only plays 2 non-heroic cards in his main deck, so he can afford to play a few non-heroic cards in his sideboard and not disturb the 4 cards I believe in too much. So yeah, very solid list. So looking forward to see what he's going to do with it. It's pretty balanced. There's a little bit of everything. He's going to be facing Filafol with his green Luke deck, and his green Luke deck is basically what you would expect from the green. We've seen a lot of Luke decks starting to play Spark of Rebellion in their main deck in order to help against control. Yeah, so playing the Mon Mothma, which is interesting. I'm not a big fan of Mon Mothma because one of the big weaknesses of Luke is the fact that the deck is a little bit slow, and Mon Mothma just makes the deck even slower sometimes. And also the fact that he doesn't play Redemption. In my opinion, Redemption is one of the best cards in the game. It is basically a win condition versus aggro. If you can play Redemption versus aggro, you almost win the game instantly. It is a great card versus Boba because it blocks the fire spray and heals a bunch. And it's not a bad card against control because it's against control. It's a 6/9. It's a 6/9, so it puts some pressure. So I find this card to be good in almost every matchup, and I think it's very, very good in some matchup, and it's okay in all the other matchups. So it's also very good versus Han. I think if I'm playing versus a Luke Green and I know that this player does not play Redemption, I feel a lot more comfortable because suddenly I can go for an aggressive plan and knowing that the Redemption is not going to come down here to completely reset my plan. So I'm a big fan of Redemption, so not seeing Redemption here in the deck, not even in the sideboard, it kind of makes me a little bit sad. Also, only 2 copies of Obi-Wan is also like kind of surprising. But the rest of the deck I think makes a lot of sense. It's pretty much what you would expect from the Sabine Green. In the sideboard we got the restock Vigilance package here to deal with control, to have more tools versus control. And I don't know if only playing 2 Vigilances and 2 restock will be enough to deal with a control deck that's going to have 3 Vigilances, potentially 3 restock, and even plays the Search Your Feelings that can look for the Vigilances and stuff. So I don't know if that's going to be enough to really pull it off. So we'll see how that works out. I mean, I guess we're not going to see because unfortunately there's no single hard control list here in this list. So this is a lot of sideboard cards that are not going to be used. I guess Vigilance can be a good card versus aggro though. A lot of healing card, devotions, and repair. A lot of ways to heal versus aggro is currently the strategy that Phil has chosen in order to deal with those aggro decks. So my hope is that actually, so if you look at the two lists, normally Luke Green has a slightly favorable matchup in against aggro because it's a mid-range deck, has a lot of sentinels, a lot of ways to win life. And I think the version that Phil is playing has a lot of healing in the deck, especially after sideboard. So I'm assuming this should be a good matchup for the Luke Green. But we know Hippo is a very good player. He does have ways to one-shot the Luke Skywalker thanks to the Steadfast Battalion. So anybody can win this game, but I would definitely put Luke Green a favorite in this matchup. Next we got the Martian playing a Krennic Green list. So this is pretty much a fairly classic Krennic list. To be honest, there's no fixed blueprint of what a Krennic list looks like. There's tons of different versions. There's almost as many different versions of Krennic as there are Krennic players, to be honest. This list is honestly pretty much what you would expect. It decides to play Avenger. Personally, in my personal experience, is like I have a slight preference for Devastator over Avenger in Krennic, simply because if you're not, I think Avenger is very strong in combination with Super Laser Blast, but if you're not playing 3 copies of Super Laser Blast, then I feel like Devastator does a much better job at stabilizing the board. But that's kind of like, it also is one cheaper. There's definitely some situation where, so it's not a criticism, it's just a personal preference. The list, as I said, is pretty much what you would expect. I love the copy of 1 Super Laser Blast in the main deck. We are playing open deck list, so knowing that you're going to know that you have 1 copy of Super Laser Blast in the deck, it's going to make him think that he's going to have to play around it, even though it's only 1 copy in the deck. Sideboard heavily oriented to fight against control. One of the quality of Krennic is that Krennic does pretty well naturally with aggro. I mean, I think the only anti-aggro card that he doesn't play is going to be the System Patrol Craft, so potentially being Storm in Space could be a problem for the deck. Even though he plays the Constant Star Viper, but other than this, the list is very, very much anti-control here. 3 Devastator, 2 Relentless, and the Emperor's Legion in the sideboard here to fight against control. Next, we got Envert playing as Boba Yellow. This is a fairly classic Boba Yellow list. No, actually, there's a few interesting things here. There's the Sneak Attack. I'm a big fan of Sneak Attack, so I think Sneak Attack has proven to be very good in Sabine Yellow. I don't know how good Sneak Attack is in this specific deck. I mean, yes, it does allow you to play your Fed Fire Spray for 1 cheaper, but you have to lose the Fed Fire Spray at the end of the turn. Now, actually, it's terrible with Fed Fire Spray because then you don't actually take advantage of the ready effect. No, yeah, so I'm trying to think. Who can really benefit from Sneak Attack in this list? I guess it's on turn 1 Swoop Racer for 4 damage. Yeah, I'm missing a piece here. Well, I really wonder what is the plan with Sneak Attack here in the specific list. It is a trick that you can pick up from Jabba the Hutt, which is nice. But yeah, I'm not super. I don't know why he's playing Sneak Attack in this deck. Only and he does make some sacrifices to make that happen. Only 2 copies of No Good to Me Dead, which is very dairy, especially when you know how many people play Han in this league. The rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. Jabba the Hutt, we see this as an anti-control sort of control card, helping out also Bounty Hunter Crew to improve the control matchup a little bit, I believe. And the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. So next we got Mikelo's list. Mikelo's list as he's playing Boba Yellow. So Mikelo is the player who won, I think, the first day of the Yuki Game Expo, and it was playing exactly this list, which I think is a very good list. It's pretty much what you would expect, a very classic yellow Boba list. Is the only originality of his specific version is the fact that he's playing Snapshot Reflexes instead of Shoot First, And I think it's a very clever idea because Shoot First is probably better against aggro, but Snapshot Reflexes is more generally useful, especially against control decks. In this case, once again, not a lot of hard control decks, but there's going to be a lot of Krennic kind of mid-rangey control decks. So in those matchups, I think Snapshot Reflexes is going to be slightly better because not only does it add a permanent +1 attack bonus, it also increases the health of your units, which allows you to play better against takedown and removal like vigilances and stuff, which I think is very good. He's playing the Headhunters as a 2-drop, which is fine. It's not amazing, but inevitably, whenever you're playing Boba Yellow, there's going to be a few cards which are going to be a little bit kind of meh. And then the sideboard is going to be, there's going to be like a little bit of everything, as you can see, to kind of fill the gaps of the deck and fight better against control. The 2 change of hearts are already in the main deck. And that's pretty much the deck. It's pretty much what you would expect. Very good player. We'll see what he's able to do in this tournament. It's always good to see tournament winner, people who win tournament in real life, then joining the TTS league and making this league more competitive and more interesting. And I think that's always cool to see that. Next we got You Can Call Me Al. For people who don't know, Al was actually the person who co-casted the UK Game Expo, so he's a very good player as well, and he's a big fan of Sabine, and he's also playing Sabine Green. So actually there's 4 Sabine players in this tournament, and he's also playing Ewing Reinforcement in the main deck as well, so kind of taking up the same observation. We actually talked about it together, and he agrees with me that Ewing Reinforcement is a key card in the control matchup, so he's playing this in the main deck, playing a third copies in the sideboard to go alongside with the Wolf, and that package is very strong. He decided to cut completely the Spectral Soldiers out of his deck, which can be risky. I think Spectral Soldiers is very well positioned in the current meta. There's a lot of and instead he prefers to play the 3 copies of Heroic Sacrifice, the 3 copies of Metal Ceremony, and the 3 copies of Rebel Assault. So basically the 2 reasons why I do like Spectral Soldiers whenever I'm playing Ewing Reinforcement is basically 2 reasons. I think there's a lot of Sentinels in the current meta. You see Charleston all over the place. Cell Block Guards still see heavy amount of play. So does Echo-based Defender, whether it's in Luke or whether it is in hand. A lot of people playing Bright Hope as well. I think there's just too many occasions to use Spectral Soldiers. The second reason is because having some 1-drops really makes Ewing better, because if you're going to be going for like double 3-drop, like Red 3 plus Fighter for Freedom, you're very happy to find a Spectral Soldiers to complete here to get the 7 resource worth of unit and make the complete value out of your Ewing, which I think is quite valuable. So I would have totally played the 3 Spectral Soldiers in the main deck. Overall, I have a slight preference for Hippo's list just for that reason, but I think obviously both decks are very similar to one another, and they're both extremely solid and played by very good players. So you didn't talk about the matchup, so it's going to be okay. So that's going to be Krennic Green versus Boba Yellow. I think it's a fairly even matchup. I think it can go. From my experience, it can go either way. I do have a slight preference of Martian's list. He does play the 2 Traders, were very useful in this matchup. So we'll see how it works out, but I think I would give, yeah, it's a fairly even matchup. Then we got Mikelo versus You Can Call Me Al. So this is a bad matchup for Sabine Green. Generally speaking, doesn't like to play against Boba Yellow. And both of those players are very good at the game, so I would give the edge to Mikelo in this specific matchup. Next, we got another a green player by Lev. Lev is a good player who's been playing since almost the beginning of the Technical Initiative League. So he's a very experienced player, and he decided to play the list that has been designed by Wu according to his deck name. So Wu is a good player and also a YouTuber. So he built this Krennic Green, and Lev is going to put it to the test here in the Technical Initiative tournament. So in this specific list, he decides to play the Regional Governors, also play the Scout Back Pursuer, a lot of 2-drops here. He also decides to play Del Mico, which is interesting. The rest of the deck is what you would expect. He decides to go for Vigilances as a way to win a bunch of health against aggro and possibly as a tool against control. play the Relentless in the main deck, one Super Laser Blast just to represent the threat. It's a very well put together deck, and he also has the anti-control package here in the sideboard with the Relentless Emperor's Legion synergies in the sideboard, which I think is very deadly versus control. Yeah, so it's pretty anti-control list, it feels like, but he has some good tools versus aggro. Between the regional governor, it's really, it feels like he took an approach that is very anti-control. Next we got Luke Green by Skywalker69. So this Luke Green is fairly much what you would expect, excepted a few things. So first he decided to play Strike True. I find Strike True to be quite good against aggro, because having access to a cheap removal is very helpful against aggro, but it's pretty underpowered in pretty much all the other matchups. Only one copy of Obi-Wan is like, for me it's wrong. Like, I think Obi-Wan cannot be, even now, is an amazing card. The Obi-Wan into Luke is it's a classic, but I still think it's a very valid play. I'm not a big fan of the Forces with me. Personally, I think the card is a bit overpriced. I mean, there's definitely some situations where it's very good, but then there's the Dispatcher. Actually, was the first did he play the Dispatcher? Oh, yeah, so something I did not mention, but Phil FL does not play Dispatcher. That is, in my opinion, 100% wrong. Like, Dispatcher, in my opinion, is the reason to play Luke Green. It fixes a lot of issue with the deck not being explosive, being a little bit too slow. Wow, so I don't know why he's not playing Dispatcher. For me, Dispatcher is an absolute big reason to play this deck. It just allows you, it gives you the speed. It's always great because even if you play on curve, let's say you still do play an Echo-based Defender, well, now you have a spare resource to give that Echo-based Defender a shield. So it's such a great card. I don't know why you would. I have no idea what would be the justification between not playing a Dispatcher in a Luke Green. Anyway, back to the Skywalker's list. So I feel like this list is a lot better than the one we've seen before. For that reason. Once again, we see the Spark of Rebellion making it the main deck, which is cool, and we see the Redemption seeing play alongside the Human Reinforcement and the Om1. I like Redemption more than I like Om1 personally in this deck, but both is fine. He's playing some more in the sideboard. Pretty good list. I like it. Moving on, we got my deck and the deck I've decided to play. So a lot of people might be surprised to not see me playing Han Green, because it's what I've been playing for the last 2 seasons. The reason why I decided to switch over is because this is a tournament. Well, there's basically 2 reasons why I decided to switch over. The first reason is, like, this is a tournament where you know in advance who you're going to be playing against, and I know everybody's going to be expecting me to play Han Green, so sometimes it is good to switch it up and to take a little bit people by surprise by playing something else. The second reason is because I've played Han Green all weekend long during the UK Game Expo, so I'm a little bit burned out on the deck. I'll be obviously be playing the deck more, but I wanted just to play something different. You know, at the end of the day, this is a game for we play the game for fun, and obviously Krennic Green is also a very strong deck. So I'm not shooting myself in the foot by playing this. I know to play the deck. I've been playing the deck plenty of time. I actually made a video very early on about Krennic Green being one of the best control decks, control mid-range deck there is. So just a few comments on my list here. It's honestly a pretty classic list. It is well geared versus aggro because we're playing both the System Patrol Craft and the Constant Star Viper to deal with the space. We also have the cargo. I decided to go for Cargo Juggernaut instead of Vigilance. I just have a slight preference for Cargo Juggernaut because I play a few blue units. I'm playing the 2 Gideons plus the Patrol Craft, which makes the Juggernaut relatively consistent. And then the rest of the deck is pretty much what you expect. I already said before, but I prefer Devastator over Avenger in that specific deck. And playing once again the 1 copy of Super Laser Blast to make people respect it. And yeah, the rest of the deck is pretty classic. It is, overall, if I had to compare this to the other Krennic ramp that we've seen, it's a version of the deck that is less late game focused and more focused on fighting aggro and beating aggro. So Is it the right choice or the wrong choice? I think judging at the metagame with the amount of Krennic Green that we've seen, it is probably the wrong choice, but obviously how could I know? We'll see how that goes. I do have an advantage though, is like I do play 3 Vanquishes in my 60, so once the sideboard comes in, I feel like I should have a fair chance, but yeah, it's I would say it's a version that is slightly less late game oriented than the other one we've seen. Um, Then we have Rebel Resource and is traditional Sabine Yellow. If you know one thing about Rebel Resource, it's like you know he's going to be playing Sabine Yellow. It is his favorite deck. He almost plays this deck almost exclusively. He's obviously very good at it. He went up to the final last round. He also won the 1K Madison with the Sabine Yellow. So obviously he's bringing Sabine Yellow again. I think his deck is pretty much what you would expect. I don't think there's many big differences. And he's called this the hypo redemption, so he's trying to win this time around and go for the anti-solo list. I don't know what specifically in this list is and specifically anti-Han, but it's a bit sad for him because he's not going to be playing against Han, he's going to be playing against my Krennic. So talking about this matchup here, I think this is a favorite matchup for Krennic. I think Krennic has always had a good matchup with aggro historically, but once again, uh, aggro can have those super powerful openings that can win against anything. And one of the cool thing about aggro and the reason why aggro is such a good deck is that it's a deck that can literally win against anything, as if it has good enough draws. And obviously, Rebel Resource is a very good player, so this is obviously going to be a close game. And yeah, but on paper, as I said, just talking about the decks themselves, the matchup is definitely favor for Krennic. Moving on to Dylan, and Dylan is playing also Krennic Green. So Dylan and I, we play test a lot with each other, and so we have similar ideas about decks and stuff. As you can see, he's playing a deck that is fairly similar to my version because he plays a lot of blue units, plays the Patrol Craft, the Blaze Mob, but he also decides to play Blaze Marbus, makes the Cargo Juggernaut even more consistent. Decide to play the Relentless in the main deck to deal with control. And yeah, the rest of the deck is what you would expect. And the sideboard is also what you would expect, even more late game. Plays a couple of Vigilances in the sideboard as well. And it is pretty much, once again, Krennic Green that you know. Different configuration. It's Krennic Greens, there's as many Krennic Green lists as Krennic players, so it's always a little bit different. There's never, it's very rare to see 2 Krennic lists that are exactly the same. And he's going to be playing a mirror match versus Michael, and Michael is he's playing also Krennic Green. Once again, this decided to go for the Vigilance route, a fairly classic list, I would say, across the board. Yeah, relatively classic. The 3 Avengers in the main deck. I would have preferred a bit more diversity on the top end. Maybe go 2 Avenger, 1 Devastator as a split. But no, decided to go all in on the Avenger. Okay. And as the list decided to play, no Super Laser Blast whatsoever, which is also something, as I said earlier, I think Avenger is very strong in combination with Super Laser Blast, but without Super Laser Blast, a lot less so. So we'll see how that works out for him. Moving on, we got Astico playing as Palpatine Red. So Astico is a French player, and he's I think the first a player who won the first French community tournament that happened online. That was a while ago. That was way before the release of the game. And I remember him winning that tournament, so he's obviously a competent player, and he decided to go for a red Palpatine list, which I think is very well positioned in this meta because he's going to have a great matchup versus all the Krennic Greens. So yeah, and I think the list looks very solid to me. He plays the ramp. It has yeah, it plays the ramp. Decide to go for the Emperor. Yeah. He has the full late game package. So the main deck really makes a lot of sense to me. The sideboard though is a little bit weird. On the sideboard he decided to go for 3 power failure, and I don't know exactly against what you really want to play those. I mean, I guess it's good against Charlton. But yeah, I'm not super convinced about the power failure. I personally much prefer Fang Fighters if you really want to deal with upgrades. And also the Veers. Veers is a decent card, but it's not a card you would think for the sideboard though. it's pretty. I guess it's pretty good to replace some of your ramp. It does have played both Stealth Blow Guards and Royal Guard, but I think Veers is a card that you would even consider in the main deck personally. I think it's really if you're playing both Stealth Blow Guards and Royal Guard, it's a card that can really pull some weight. And then the Relentless for the sideboard and the Muddies for the combo with Palpatine. You can sacrifice your Muddy to untap something. There's some interesting combo potential. I don't know exactly in what matchup you want to bring them in. It's a fairly situational card, but in rest situation, it is a good card. Moving on, we got Beton with his Boba Green. And his Boba Green is very much what you would expect with the difference of... so he actually won a showdown with it, apparently. A Boba Showdown winner. Oh, this is the list of Voltor, actually. It's called Beton on the thing, but yeah, it is Voltor's list. Okay. So Voltor is a very good polished player, a friend of SIP. He played last season in the Top Cut tournament, didn't do so well, but this time around he's coming back with fresh ideas for his Boba Green list. So first of all, elephant in the room is 3 copies of Cunning, which is something that the Polish Boba Green players have been loving. Every time I see a Polish player playing Boba Green, you can be sure that he has 3 Cunning in his main deck. It's very, very popular over here. They really think very highly of the card. Other than this, we got a couple of interesting things. We got 1 copy of Falcon out of Aspect and a copy of Bamboozle. So I wonder really in what matchup does he really want to play Bamboozle. Something worth noticing about Bamboozle is that you don't have to pay the Aspect penalty if you decided to pitch a Cunning card to play it for free. I don't know how often you would want to do this, but it's something worth noticing. And then the Falcon, I guess, is like kind of an extra copy of Fed Fire Spray. It really helps us against control. As you can see, this is a list that has been built to beat control. I mean, the Falcon in the main deck, and you see the entire sideboard is going to be sided against control. He has the 3 Relentless, the Devastator, and because there's for more copies of Relentless, why not going for the Chimera? Which and then also obviously the Body Rooks and the Change of Hearts. All of this is to fight against control, and he's going to be very sad when he's going to realize that not many people play hard control. I mean, obviously Devastator and Change of Heart, very good cards against Krennic as well, but Relentless and definitely a Chimera, definitely cards that you would more likely play against hard control. So let's talk about the Chimera a little bit. So I've actually had a very long talk with Voltor about what he thinks about Chimera. So he really likes Chimera in the sideboard. And the reason why he likes it is because it is difficult to kill. It's a 7 HP unit with a shield, and if the opponent doesn't deal with it, the discard effect is very potent versus control. And also, what is very cool about this card is like it fits in the curve. You can go turn 8, so turn 7 or turn 6 if you decide to ramp. Turn 6 Chimera, turn 7 Relentless, turn 8 Devastator. So it fits kind of in a super late game curve where you can basically play Star Destroyers after Star Destroyers on curve. So this is kind of like the arguments in favor of it, and I don't believe in it at all. I personally, I don't think it's necessarily something. I think if you really want to double down on control and really want to build your deck to kill control, I think you're better off playing copies of Emperor's Legion. I think Emperor's Legion Relentless is one of the strongest things you can do against control. Chimera is not that difficult to deal with for control. All they have to do is play a Vanquish or Power the Dark Side. And the thing is, the card has no immediate impact when it comes to play. It gives an entire turn for the opponent to kind of answer it, to find some sort of removal. Also dies to Super Laser Blast, obviously. So the shield is almost kind of irrelevant in this matchup. And then finally, the problem is like even if you do happen to attack with it and you name the card, you're not guaranteed to hit and to be able to discard with the Chimera. So it's unreliable, it is slow, and it is not that difficult to deal with. In my opinion, it's not a very good card. I guess the other argument that he had for the Chimera was to be a card that was very good against other Star Destroyers, but that he can basically kill an Avenger or Relentless without dying because of his shield. But once again, it's very slow. To be able to accomplish this, you need to play the Chimera first, and then wait an entire turn, and how often is the opponent going to let you do that? So he told me he has a very good experience with it. I also told him that if you're going to be siding in 3 Relentless Devastator, 2 Body Rook, and 2 Change of Heart, whether you have 2 cameras in the deck or not, I don't think it makes a huge difference. You're gonna have a good match of this control because your entire sideboard is against control. Obviously, it does have a lot of anti-aggro card. It does come as a cost, right? Because it does come at the cost of playing less anti-aggro cards, so it doesn't play any shoot first. It does not even play no good to me dead, which in my opinion is crazy. If you're expecting to play against like Han, and you don't have no good to me dead, I know you don't play no good to me dead. I'll feel a lot more comfortable playing against you if I know for a fact that you don't have no good to me dead in your deck. It just makes it so much easier for Han to play against you. It does play Bamboozle instead, but Bamboozle is not nearly as good as No Good to Me Dead, because No Good to Me Dead is the value of blocking Han and make sure I cannot ramp the turn after as well, which is just incredible. So yeah, despite some of those disagreements, I feel that the list is obviously going to be very strong. It is at the end of the day a green Boba list, and the matchup here is going to be against Palpatine, which I believe should be a good matchup for Boba Green. Especially since Change of Heart is going to be super good against after sideboard, and so I think this should be a good matchup for Boba Green. And here it is. I've given my opinion about all the different lists. I mean, all of those lists here are pretty competitive. I'm pretty much think that all those lists are strong. I'm just a little bit skeptical on Falafel list, the fact that he's not playing the dispatcher, but other than this, everything, a lot of cool ideas to counter control, but then nobody plays control, so it's kind of like that's kind of interesting. So a very kind of late gamey, mid-rangey matchup in which I'm sure the Krennic is going to do pretty well, but so we'll see how that goes. And I'm sure this is a very good. By the way, this is a very good environment for Palpatine, so I wouldn't be surprised if Palpatine is going to do very well in that environment, because Palpatine loves to play against all those super late, all those Krennic decks. And I'm pretty glad, retrospectively, I'm pretty glad that I didn't bring Han, because I think that Han would have a pretty bad time in this meta game. It's a meta full of Krennic and Palpatine. This would be a pretty bad meta for Han, so I'm pretty glad I didn't bring him. Another announcement I want to make as well is like I will not be playing the next season of the Technology, the season 4, simply because we are getting closer to the release of Shadow of the Galaxy. We're getting spoilers all the time, and I wanted to basically focus my efforts in trying to work on Shadows of the Galaxy's decks and improve my and basically build and focus on that. And the Tech Initiative tournament does take up a lot of your time, especially if you're playing both the Top Cut and the League at the same time. So between my YouTube channel, the coaching that I'm doing, plus the Top Cut, I just wanted to free myself a little bit of time, so I'm not going to be playing the season 4. So don't be surprised if I'm not appearing in the top 16 of the next season. However, I will be covering the top 16 because there's always some interesting build to look at in the. So obviously I'll be covering it in an upcoming videos. Thank you so much for following that video, and I'll see you next time.